Today we're going to talk about beneficiaries, and this is really a subject that here at PERS is near and dear to our heart. We often see folks not naming beneficiaries or naming them without understanding the consequences. And so this is really designed to really talk through retirement and life insurance beneficiaries. So we're going to go over retirement, what the law says, and the agony, and I mean agony, of not naming a beneficiary. We're going to talk about a lifetime payment versus a refund rollover and how that impacts beneficiary designation. We're also going to talk about our life insurance. And folks, I want to make sure that if you realize that if you are not a state employee, you may or may not have our Voya life insurance. And so one of my slides will be talking about how you can find that out. Okay, so life insurance may not apply to everybody, but if you're in one of our 9 retirement plans, that retirement beneficiary designation sure does, and it's important stuff. Okay, so retirement. Here's the deal. If you are married and you are enrolled in our retirement plan, you have to name your spouse as your beneficiary unless your spouse signs off otherwise. And another thing, and I'm just going to kind of freely speak here. I know I've got a lot of words here, but I want to give you a scenario of some situations I've seen. I recently had an active employee who was married, vested, and had named the spouse as 25% beneficiary for primary and 3 minor children as the other 325%. And the spouse signed off on it. So he said, yeah, that's fine. That's okay. Well, guess what? This person passed. When somebody is married and vested, meaning they have 36 months of service in our plan, we have an option to give to that surviving spouse a monthly lifetime benefit based upon date of death, or of course they can always cash out. But if I have a spouse that that is named in conjunction with other primary beneficiaries and they've signed off on it, guess what? All I can do is pay out each beneficiary their portion of the minimum guarantee from that member. So in this kind of an example, maybe there was, I don't know, 50 grand that I'm going to split between all these beneficiaries, whereas, and this was a young person, in their 30s. This husband could have received, say, $300 a month based on the lifetime benefit for the rest of their life. Well, do the math. I mean, that over time, that's really, really helpful. So I always encourage people to check their beneficiaries because things like that really do matter. So the first question is, are you married? If you're married, it really does matter who you're going to name as beneficiary. If you and your spouse agree amongst yourself that, maybe it's your kids and they're willing to sign off on it, great. If they don't mind splitting it and they sign off on it, great. But do make sure that you understand how our plan works because, getting, say, a $300 a month benefit when you're 35, conceivably till you turn 90 versus, a quarter of 50,000 full-on tax right now is probably, a better choice is probably to get that lifetime benefit. But you tie hands here with how we can pay it out based on how you name your beneficiaries. And so my first question always is, are you married? The next question, and again, going back to my scenario, are you married and vested? So are there 36 contributions, 36 months of service? You're vested. If that is the case, and your spouse is your only primary, when upon your death, we're going to calculate the benefit right there, hard stop, and we're going to say, hey, spouse, you can take a monthly lifetime benefit. You can enroll in any of our eligible retiree insurances. If your plan has a health credit, your spouse would get that as well. Or, I mean, they always have the option to cash it out. Let me give you another example of this. I had a person in sort of the same situation, um, same but different. This person, the member passed fairly young, but he was vested, but not at normal retirement, meaning he hadn't reached his rule or the age of 65 or whatever his plan dictated. But the same deal. This time, though, the spouse was the primary. And I wrote and said, hey, you can take this monthly benefit or you could cash out. And she, of course, took it to her financial advisor and they said, well, just roll the money over to us. And guys, I'm going to tell you, we at PERS, we're not financial advisors, so I don't even want to go down that road and pretend like we are. But I do like to do the math. And so she had called me and I said, okay, 'cause she wanted to know how to fill out the form. And I said, are you sure you understand though? I mean, in this case, it was like a $1,200 a month benefit versus cashing out or not cashing out, but run over like maybe $70,000. And I said, you're eligible even at 40 years old to start drawing your 1,200 bucks a month. If you roll it over there, what are their plan rules? And, do you have to wait to start drawing it? Can they invest it so that you can draw 1,200 bucks or more a month for the rest of your life? And I said, and again, I'm not your financial advisor. I just want to make sure that you understand how the plan works. And so that being said, guys, I really encourage you to talk about how this plan works with your spouse because what a heck of a time for your spouse to have to try to figure out what works best for them and without understanding how this works. And so, and I know talking about future and death and all that stuff gets a little bit, it makes us all a little queasy, but it's important stuff. So I really do encourage you. So here's my deal. Are you married and are you vested? Have you named your spouse as primary? Um, if you have not, and they've signed off accordingly, right? Because they have to say it's okay. Do you want to revisit that? So if you were to pass away being married and vested and your spouse said, no, go ahead and leave it to the kids and signed off on it, we're going to cash it out to the kids. So just an FYI, and everybody's situation is different. Just really want you to understand the differences. Okay, so are you single? And this one doesn't matter if you're vested or not vested because there's no law saying, hey, you got to name your mom. You can name anybody you want, okay? It doesn't matter whether you're vested in the plan because you're not married. So whomever you name will just be offered either a refund or a rollover. Okay. Let's say you named your primary and contingent beneficiaries, but the primary died and you did not notify NDPERS. Okay. So this is a situation where the primary beneficiary has passed. And normally when we know that somebody's passed, we send out, a notification asking you to update your beneficiary, but we don't hound you. And so let's say that my primary has passed, I've passed, it's going to go accordingly to the contingents, and it will be divided accordingly, either a refund or a rollover. I always, when I visit with people, that's one of the things I do. I kind of go through their account and say and look to see if they have beneficiaries and things like that. Most people don't name contingents, and it is not required, but it's not a bad idea because if I don't have a contingent, then I'm going to write to your estate, and then somebody has to be a personal rep, which is going to require some paperwork, and let's face it, so this benefit that you're leaving to your estate is going to require somebody to do a lot of extra work. It's not a bad idea, folks, to really think about naming contingents. What I always tell people, especially when they're retiring and they're updating their beneficiaries, is, go ahead and name the kids, but tell them not to quit their day job because more than likely they're not going to get anything. But with that, let me give you another example. I had a recent retiree. She took what's called the 100% joint and survivor, which means if she passed, her husband would get that benefit for the rest of their life. They, unfortunately, very sadly, were both killed in a car accident 1 month after she retired. She got 1 month's worth of benefit. Did not name contingent beneficiaries. So there's this big chunk of change laying out there that now I have to write to the estate, and there's got to be a personal rep assigned to it. And it would have been, it ends up being the kids usually. And so they're working through all this other duress, and now they've got to come up with this kind of paperwork. I guess my thought is make it easy on yourself. If you have some kids and you like them, because we don't always like them, but if you have kids and you like them, name them as contingents. So just food for thought. Okay. So again, if you pass away before drawing your retirement or while drawing your benefit, and your primary beneficiary is also deceased and you've not named contingents, and you have money left in your account balance, I'm going to pay to the estate. Okay, and again, this means you got to get, whoever is taking care of your stuff has to go get personal rep paperwork and all that other stuff. It just makes it so much easier if you name contingents. Let me give you another example. I had a situation where it did go to the estate, and within that it said, I want you to pay my 10 nieces and nephews from all of my assets. And so the sister that was the personal rep had called and said, can we just pay them directly, please? I am so tired of cutting these checks every single month. And I said, well, I can't because that's not how they set it up. Had they named these 10, we had to just paid them out, in tenths, the lump sum. So, this planning really, it's not about us when we're deceased because we're doing other things, but, it's about the living. So, how, we want to make things easy for folks and we want money to go where we want it to go. All right. So what if your beneficiaries are minors? I gave you a couple of examples, and I think the first one was the spouse being named 25 and the 3 kids being named 25. These kids were all under 18. They were young kids. So what happens then is, and this isn't like an unreasonable thing to do, but it's one more step. So now I can't, not only can I not offer that surviving spouse a lifetime benefit, but now I've got to pay out to him and the 3 kids. And in addition to that, each kid has a form that they have to fill out. And then we also, because they're under 18, we got to do an affidavit of minor beneficiaries, and it needs to be completed and notarized. Well, here's another situation. Man, I have so many examples, I just can't stand it. But here's the deal. I had another one where this occurred, and the minor children were named because there was a divorce, and so again, the deceased person, they're off doing better things, right? But now there's this whole family uproar because guess who guess who the person caring for him is? It's the ex-wife, and apparently there's bad blood. So even though the intent was I want these minor kids to have it, it's going to this person to control their money. And maybe it's okay. But just think it through, because who's going to control the funds of your minor children? And is that okay? Next thing, no beneficiaries on file. And I've touched on this already. If people just don't have a beneficiary designation, we do reach out to them several times, but we can't force you to designate a beneficiary. So again, if there's nothing on file, we're going to write to the estate, and someone needs to be your PR, your personal rep. Okay. So to summarize, if I'm married and not vested, I'm just going to do a refund rollover, okay? Because the only way I'm going to offer a monthly lifetime benefit to your surviving spouse is if you're vested. If I am married and vested and my spouse is my only primary, I'm going to offer him a monthly lifetime benefit, or of course they can always cash out. But remember, if I'm married and vested and my primary is not my spouse, and my spouse has signed off on all this stuff, all I can do is refund rollover to those primary beneficiaries that he agreed to. If I'm single, I'm vested or not vested, doesn't matter. It's just going to be a payout to whoever you've deemed your beneficiary. All right, we're going to talk about life insurance next. This is underwritten by Voya, and I want to again mention that not everybody's going to have our life insurance, being NDPERS life insurance. If you're in a state agency, but bam, you have our life insurance, you're automatically enrolled. Your employer is funding $1,200. You have an option, of course, to increase your benefit, your life insurance, and also you can add some insurance for any kind of your dependents. If you're in a political subdivision, and guys, this is really important, only about 40% of our members are state agency people. Probably 60% are political subdivisions. Political subdivision means you're a county, you're a city, you're a school. You are governmental agency, but you are not a state agency. Not all governmental agencies that are not state agencies are in our plan, though. Okay, but so those folks that are in political subdivisions, you know who you are. You may or may not have our life insurance. It depends on how your employer, what they asked for as far as our offerings and what was available to offer them when they signed up for our plans. So if you do have it as a political subdivision, you will know it. And there's a couple ways I'm going to tell you to find out how to know it. So, but before we get there, life insurance. I can name whomever I want for my beneficiary, whether I'm married or unmarried, okay? My spouse doesn't need to sign off. Now, if I have life insurance and I have not named any beneficiaries, then this is how it works. We send out what's called an affidavit about heirs of the decedent, and then Voya is obligated to pay in the following: either first your spouse, or then if no spouse, children, if no children, parents, and if none of those, the estate. This affidavit has to be completed and notarized. So if I have no beneficiaries and it becomes payable to the estate, again, gonna have to have that personal rep paperwork. Just trying to make life easier for those that are still living, right? So just naming the beneficiaries so that you get your money to go where you would like it to go. All right. How do I know if I have life insurance with PERS? You can either check member self-service or you can ask your employer. So what happens if you divorce? If I've named my spouse as my beneficiary and I divorce, and I say, hey, it's all friendly, that's fine. I don't care if they continue to get, upon my death, that they get my stuff. Well, guess what? We can't pay them unless you update your beneficiary again after your divorce. I know, seems crazy, but so let's say that my spouse and I have an amicable divorce, and I say I'm not even going to bother changing my beneficiaries, and I die, then I can't pay the spouse unless after the divorce these have been updated. And guys, we don't keep track of who your beneficiaries are for other non-NDPERS benefits like 457 or 403B plans. You're going to have to work directly with them. And so just, I guess, throwing this out broadly, if you divorce, if you want to update beneficiaries, I'm only talking about the ones with us, but you've got other stuff. Maybe you've got other life insurance policies out there. Maybe you have pre-tax qualified plans out there that you want to ensure that you have the correct beneficiaries for. So don't forget about those as well. Okay, so how do I know if I have life insurance? So if I go out to our member self-service, so this is our website, and I go into my member login. Guys, if you haven't created an account, we have an excellent YouTube video on how to do this. If you have one of our plans, if you have a retirement, you can go out there and make yourself this member login. When I go out there, I'm going to click on my NDPERS plans, and it's going to list everything that I am eligible for. And when I say everything I'm eligible for, look at this. I've elected, in this case, maybe to take all these things, but waived this. I'm eligible. So if I don't have life insurance, or I'm not eligible for life insurance, this is not going to show up right here, right? So another way that you can double check this stuff, um, again, besides member self-service, is when we send the annual statements out, it's going to list who your beneficiaries are, and it will also list like who your retirement beneficiaries are and your life insurance beneficiaries are. So that's another way to find out A, who your beneficiaries are, and B, whether or not you have life insurance. All right. So another thing to also think about for the retirement plan, going out to member self-service, I go to the plans, I go to the benefits I'm enrolled in, and then after that, when I click on it, it's going to bring up my beneficiaries down here. So I can use member self-service to find out which plans I am enrolled in and member self-services to find out who my beneficiaries are. So there's tons and tons and tons of way to figure all this stuff out. Now, if you are interested in updating your beneficiaries, this is one thing we cannot do through member self-services, guys, because we need your physical wet signature, because this is an important legal document. The way you would update it is you could go to our homepage, to our NDPERS homepage, and you'll see on the right, popular forms. Here those guys are. You would fill them out. I don't care if you type, your beneficiary names and socials and all that stuff in there, but you need to physically sign and date it. I'm going to tell you reasons that we often send designations back to people. We need the full Social Security. We need the date of birth. We need the full name. We need the percentage designated, and we need the address. And so if sometimes people will send this in and they'll say, um, I'm naming boy child and this is the date of birth, and I'm not going to put the Social Security number in because it's none of your business, PERS. And we're going to send it back because the only way we can set up your beneficiaries in our system is by having those pieces of information, because what it does is create what we call a PERS link ID. So and you all have PERS link IDs, but anybody associated with you will also receive one, but we do have to have those critical pieces of information. Once you do this, there's multiple ways you can get it back to us. And so you can scan it as a PDF and email it here. You can mail it to us. You can fax it to us. We will not accept photos. So, don't fill it all out and slap it on your dining room table and take a photo with your iPhone and then send it that way. We don't like those because they don't scan well and they're not legible. Here's ways to contact us. Here's our website, member self-service. We have YouTube and we have Facebook.